Just moments ago in Washington, an urgent appeal was made to write a will and leave social media. The United States State Department has urgently addressed Americans and urged its citizens to leave Russia as soon as possible, or to lay low and not show any activity, even on social media. In other words, the State Department is saying either run from Russia, or if you can't do that, just do everything you can to stay unnoticed by the Russian security services. The official reason is, quote, the high risks of arbitrary detentions arising from Russia's war against Ukraine, limited consular assistance, and sanctions that make it difficult to use bank cards. A potential threat of terrorist attacks is also mentioned among the reasons. Ukrainian intelligence previously said the Kremlin is planning a provocation causing many casualties in Russia. In addition, the United States State Department has assigned Russia to the 4th security level, which states that under no circumstances should you travel to this country. And if you have already decided to go, then it's your responsibility, and there's no guarantee that the United States authorities will be able to help you in any way. But it's also telling that earlier there were reports that the Federal Security Service in Russia killed 3 suspects during detention in just 1 week. And all those killed were suspected by the paranoid Kremlin of preparing sabotage on the orders of Ukrainian intelligence against the current Russian authorities. This says a lot about the level of paranoia of Putin and the level of lawlessness in Russia. My name is Alexei Pechi. Let's discuss this topic together, but before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, like the video, and leave any comment under this episode. This really helps promote this video, and subscribe to my Telegram channel Peachy News. The link is in this video's description. So, the United States Department of State has urged its citizens to urgently leave Russia due to high risks of terrorism, arbitrary detention, and unlawful application of local laws. For those who decide to stay, it is recommended to make a will, prepare all necessary documents, and limit the use of social media. The United States Department of State warns all United States citizens about risks such as unlawful detention and persecution by Russian law enforcement, arbitrary local laws, and possible terrorist attacks like explosions and drone strikes in major cities. Limited consular assistance due to the reduction of staff at the United States Embassy in Moscow and the closure of consulates throughout the country. For those Americans who remain in Russia, the Department of State recommends making a will and designating insurance beneficiaries, preparing documents and evacuation plans, limiting activity on social media, following the instructions of local authorities, and being vigilant about their surroundings. In addition, the United States Department of State noted that they will not be able to help those who decide to stay in Russia and become subject to repression by the dictatorial regime of Putin. The United States has classified Russia as a level 4 danger, which means not to travel to this country under any circumstances. I'd like to point out that the Ukrainian Foreign Intelligence Service said Russia is planning a major provocation with casualties on or before January 7 to disrupt United States-mediated peace talks. Next is a quote from the Ukrainian Foreign Intelligence Service after the so-called attack on Putin's residence. We are tracking the Kremlin's spread of new fabricated information to prepare Russian and foreign audiences for further escalation. With a high degree of probability, we predict a shift from manipulative influence to an armed provocation by the Russian Federation's special services with significant human casualties. And according to the Foreign Intelligence Service, the site of the Russian terrorist attack could be a religious building or another facility with significant symbolic importance, either on Russian territory or in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. To fabricate evidence of Ukraine's involvement, it is planned to use debris from Western-made strike UAVs, which will be brought to the site of the provocation from the front line. The United States State Department statement also notes that Russia does not recognize dual United States-Russian citizenship, so people with dual citizenship may be drafted into the army. And here's another interesting point in this situation. Back then, the head of Ukrainian military intelligence, Kirill Budanov, stated that for 2026 the Russian mobilization plan is to recruit 409,000 people. Budanov says this shows Russia's military and political leaders are committed to ongoing combat and are trying to offset heavy frontline losses with new recruitment waves. And despite meeting the plans, the recruitment process in Russia is not going smoothly. And when asked whether Moscow is facing problems recruiting people for the war, Kirill Budanov gave an affirmative answer. According to him, the flow of those willing to die for Putin's ambitions is gradually drying up, so the Russian authorities are forced to constantly raise the stakes, buying the loyalty of citizens. But at the same time, Budanov admitted that Russia might announce a new wave of partial mobilization in 2026. And here the United States State Department is telling those who have both American and Russian passports to run, because you might be mobilized. The United States State Department also warns that even peaceful demonstrations, photographing law enforcement officers, or supporting lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender rights can lead to arrest. In addition, American credit cards don't work in Russia and air travel is limited. Americans who remain in Russia are advised to plan their departure on their own and not to rely on full assistance from the embassy. For up-to-date information and emergency alerts, United States citizens are advised to use only the State Department's website. And next, they will quote the United States State Department website, which is very telling. Do not travel to Russia for any reason. The United States Embassy in Moscow can provide only limited assistance if a United States citizen is detained. There is no guarantee that the Russian government will grant the United States Embassy consular access to detained United States citizens. United States citizens may serve their entire prison sentence without release, and the risk of wrongful detention of United States citizens remains very high. Even if a case is recognized as wrongful, there is no guarantee of release. Russian officials often interrogate and threaten United States citizens without any reason. Russian security services have arrested United States citizens on false charges, denied them fair treatment, and issued guilty verdicts without compelling evidence. Russian authorities have launched questionable investigations against United States citizens for their religious activities, and Russian authorities have interrogated, threatened, and detained them. This applies to both former and current employees of the United States government and armed forces, as well as ordinary private United States citizens. Russian authorities have a history of wrongfully detaining United States citizens and using them as bargaining chips. And finally, I'll add a related piece of news. The level of paranoia in the Kremlin is simply off the charts now. On New Year's Eve, there was news that Federal Security Service officers in Russia shot and killed a third Russian citizen in a week during an arrest, accusing them of preparing a sabotage. And all three were killed. The Federal Security Service said they planned explosions and sabotage on orders from Ukrainian special services. The most recent incident occurred on December 30 in Kabardino-Balkaria, where the Federal Security Service killed a man and later claimed he had allegedly trained at a Special Operations Forces camp of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. And he returned to Russia through third countries. A conversation in Telegram with a handler from the Ukrainian Special Services was found on his phone. Were there any proofs? Yes, of course not. This is Russia. What proofs? And it is exactly this country that Washington advises not to visit under any circumstances. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments under this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like, friends. If you found this episode interesting and useful, you can support the work of this YouTube channel with your donation or sponsorship subscription through the links and details provided. In the description of this video, it says support the Alexei Pechi channel. Choose any format that is convenient for you. Thank you for any support. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.